The last time we got together, you said the Consul Capri was the coolest Ford ever made.
Yeah, it is.
And I said I preferred a Mk1 Cortina Lotus.
Yeah, you did.
Well, today we've got a Mk1 Lotus Cortina that has a very interesting past, but more importantly, it has something really special in the boot. Our story begins in 1965 in West Sussex. The county's police transport manager decided to purchase 5 brand new Mk1 Lotus Cortinas, with a plan to buy more at a later date. Back then you could get 3 Cortinas for the price of 1 Mark II Jaguar. Today we're looking at the first car in this picture, GBP 1C.
This is the actual car. Now, it was fitted with an alternator, not a dynamo, and that's because it had to cope with all the extra electrical equipment and it had a higher demand.
Such as the 2-tone police horns, the rotating blue lamp, it had a 2-way radio and a transposed speedo, so the passenger officer could see the speed of the car when in hot pursuit.
Now, the colour was ermine white, which is the complete opposite to the black Jaguars they were using at the time. Now, the reason why they chose white is they actually wanted to be seen by as many drivers as possible because they thought it would be a deterrent.
The car was only in service for 2 years. It did 3 shifts a day, 7 days a week, and sometimes clocked up 350 miles per day.
By 1967, their service had come to an end. They were replaced by the Mark II. So all the Mark Is went off to auction, complete with the same green stripe and with the same engine.
Did you mention a Mark II Cortina?
I did, yeah.
Because my good friend Jim Payton has got an amazing Mark II Lotus Cortina police car. And if you want to see that video, check it out in the link above. But if you want to see what's in the boot, stay tuned.
So what happened to GBP 1C then?
What didn't happen to it? So, sit tight, here goes. The man who bought it from the auction kept it from 1967 to 1969 and sold it to a man in Brighton, who once again sold it in 1975 for £285. This time it went to a student who used it to go to and from work, who then sold it to a mate in 1975 for £250. The next time it changed hands was in 1977, and by this time it had a 1600 cross-flow engine fitted, as the twin cam had been stolen while it was garaged for a while. During this period it had an under-bonnet wiring fire and was rescued from the breakers just in the nick of time. It was sold again in 1981 for £300, but when it reached the next owner he kept it for 17 years, did major restoration work and took it to shows between 1993 and 94. Then in 1996, an old advert in the Lotus Cortina Register magazine showed the car up for sale for £9,500. Then in 2001, the car was bought by Keith for £11,000. Keith, welcome down to Barnes. It's fair to say you've been after this car for quite a while, haven't you?
Yeah, that's right. It was owned by a friend of mine, and I tried to buy it off him a couple of times, but he didn't want to know. But eventually his circumstances changed, and he decided to sell it to me, which was good news for me, because I said I really wanted it. And I bought it, and almost immediately I thought, right, I've got to start improving this car, because I'd had a GT before and run out of road on things to do. So I thought, right, I'll bring this one up to spec. So I got round to changing everything that needed changing, and did it on a piecemeal method, really just sort of going right round the car bit by bit, chasing the problems. But as you know with these things, you never get to the bottom of it. You just keep going round and round like the Forth Road Bridge. So anyway, I eventually got to the stage where a friend of mine who runs a body shop near me said to me, why don't you just bite the bullet and do it properly? And I said, well, it doesn't really need it. And he said, no, it does, it really does. He said, you can't see it, but it really does need it. So anyway, I decided to go with his advice, took it to his workshop, stripped it, blasted it, and sure enough, underneath you could find all the plates that had gone on during the 60s and 70s. So if you got a small hole, you put a big plate on it. That rotted, you put a bigger plate on it, and so on. So it took loads and loads of metal out of the car, and it really was in bad shape. but we managed to get there and changed everything inside. I took all the parts back to my garage, renovated them or replaced them because you couldn't put old parts on new paintwork, and the result is what you see today.
So about the engine?
Yeah, the engine, that had a bit of a misfortune when I first got it. It blew up and I replaced it. A friend of mine had a newish engine under his workshop bench, which he's had since the 70s, and it came out of a Europa, and he said to me, I can do this for you. I said, well, that'd be perfect. It's a much stronger engine than the old one, although it's later. And he took it apart, rebuilt it and put it in, and it's as it is today.
So what's the BHP on that then?
105 brake.
And she stops okay?
Perfectly, yeah. The brakes are Girling power stop servo and P16 calipers. It pulled up lovely.
Now, I heard a rumour, something about these cars doing something secretive at night.
That's right. Yeah, the police used to go onto the local race circuit at Goodwood and use that overnight because it was obviously not being used. And they used to race around there and take it flat out through the gears until the rev limiter cut in to stop the engine. So they used to just chase around the circuit overnight.
I suppose you could call it training, couldn't you? Because if you were hot pursuit, at least you knew what the car could do.
Story of this fantastic car, we need to know what's in the boot. But before we do that, please get involved. What do you think of this Mk1 Cortina Lotus? Please let us know in the comments below. Do you have an ex-police car?
Do you remember seeing these police cars on the road at the time?
If you do, please leave a comment in the messages below. And as always, don't forget to subscribe. Right, Keith, what's in this boot?
Have you got a body in the boot, Keith? Oh, it's a police uniform.
That's right. Now, Keith wanted a uniform to go with the car, so he pops himself on eBay, and then something incredible happens.
Yeah, I was looking around for a police uniform to go with the car, just any uniform really, and I came across this one, and I thought it looks remarkably like the original uniforms used in the 60s. And so I zoomed in on the detail, and it looked even more like it. So on a whim, I bought it, paid £100 for it, and when it arrived through the post, opened it up, it was exactly the one I was looking for, and even better, when I peeled the coat back, there was a label there with Sergeant Baverstock's name on it, and he was one of the police that used the car in the 60s.
So is an actual driver of your car back then,
yes,
and you have the uniform. What's the chances of that happening?
It's unbelievable,
Millions to one, I should think.
So what happened to all the other Lotus Cortinas in the fleet? 2C is unknown. 3C was a race car for many years and is currently being restored. 4C was recently discovered in a garage. It'd been laid there for 42 years. 5C is waiting restoration. 7C was scrapped in the 1970s. 8C was written off in service in 1966 with an engine fire. 9C has been restored and is back on the road. Be nice to see these cars all back together again.
I have to admit, the Cortina is cool.
Told you so, didn't I? But here's a question for you. A Mk1 or a Mk2 Lotus Cortina?
It's easy. I'm a bit of a girl racer, so it has to be the Mark II. It's more powerful.
But what do you think? A Mk1 or a Mk2 Lotus Cortina? Please leave us your messages in the comments below.
And if you want to see a Mark II Lotus Cortina, click here.
But if the Consul Capri's more your thing, watch this video. And we'll catch you next time
Down at the parks.